after Nick. Nick Smith is the founder of this group, of the DeBarra spoken word. But for Nick, I'm a retired law clerk, so I always use this term, but for. The but for argument in litigation means liability, but for one action, the other thing, the accident wouldn't happen. So but for Nick Smith, we wouldn't be sitting here tonight. He's the founder of DeBarra spoken word, and he has been writing short stories, flash fiction, poetry, novel works, most of his adult life. And he's also at the moment undertaking the final edit of a novel. It's a mixture of fiction with an autobiographical element. He also had short stories entitled Dead Language and An Ultimate Resolution. I love the two titles because we were talking about Irish earlier, and they won literary acclaim. He's also a regular attendee at the Clonakilty Library Writers Group, and I have no doubt he's facilitating that to a huge extent. So Nick, please.
Thanks very much, Margaret. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Right. I'm on the headphones, which makes everything a bit mute. Some absolutely amazing presentations, and I feel quite honoured to be in the company of such honesty. But I've got a piece here that I would just read. I can't do it extempore because I'll be worried about losing my way. So we'll see how we go. 20 years ago, I embarked unintentionally on an inner journey that was orchestrated by a conspiracy of circumstances. My marriage had failed. My mother was in the last few days of her life, and I was about to turn 50. And they say things come in threes. At the time, I did not appreciate the impact of these significant times of loss. Neither was I aware that my precarious emotional state had already started to erode the frozen entrance to a bleak and darkened tomb, an area of my life long abandoned, hidden beneath years of denial. Something had collapsed. The final catalysts that prompted this sojourn were some papers that I had found shortly after my mother's death. They were secreted in my father's small desktop bureau that had recently come into my possession. He had died 20 years previous. In a hidden compartment in the bureau, I found a battered and innocuous-looking brown envelope from which I withdrew 4 flimsy pieces of paper. They turned out to be the birth certificates of my deceased siblings, 2 older brothers, dated 1945 and 1946, and 2 younger sisters, dated 1953 and 1960. I had heard little about these long absent family members, they being seldom mentioned by my parents, almost as though their very existence had been a cause of shame. I examined the certificates closely, the red embossed borders looking very official, the spidery handwriting of the various registrars, the varying locations of birth, and the disparate occupations of my father, all witness to the precariousness of life. As I laid them out in chronological order, it was as though a huge piece of a jigsaw had found a home. For it was a homecoming, even more so when I included my own birth certificate, nestled snugly in the middle. For the first time, I felt enwrapped, a secure, a rightness about my place, not the permanent limbo that I had always felt it to be. I experienced a sense of mutual gratitude at their discovery and heartfelt grief for their loss. For weeks, I existed in an overwhelming state of tearful euphoria. These were my family. They were no longer in the physical realm, yet they had existed for a brief while, and their spirits, present in the shadows, now come to light. But despite this enormous plateau of understanding and connection, I still felt an absence, as though someone was still unaccounted for. As I have mentioned, the very existence of my siblings was inferred, hardly ever mentioned. The nearest my mother came was when she told me that she could not understand how my older brother and myself had survived when the others had died so soon after birth. She called us her little miracles. When I was a bit older, she told me how she almost lost me at the annual fair in Stratford-on-Avon, where I grew up. It was the evening of October the 12th, 1950. I would have been 3 months in utero. My mother had started to bleed heavily. Fearing the worst, she was rushed home and confined to bed. I somehow survived. As a child, I could not comprehend these gory details, but on discovery of the certificates, some sixth sense began to prod. Was it normal for a woman to bleed during pregnancy? Research seemed to imply that such a discharge during the first trimester was often synonymous with miscarriage. But I was alive, unless. This persistent nag remained with me for weeks as I tossed around countless what-ifs. I finally called a halt. Something seemed to be pressing. One evening I lit 2 candles, and with no reason other than a hunch, tentatively acknowledged that I may have been born a surviving twin. And that if I was a surviving twin, then I had shared the most intimate and formative part of my life with somebody who would have been closer to me than even our own mother. Acknowledgement brought a profound sense of relief, a further falling into place. I cannot fully describe the range or depth of feelings, as over the course of coming weeks and months, something fundamental, someone fundamental, fell into place. I was on an emotional roller coaster, and my feelings ranged from elation at my soulmate's discovery to the awareness of a chasm of unexpressed grief that I had carried since the cataclysm of her loss, which I thought would carry me away, wished at times that it had done so. The circumstances that led to her demise and the personal impact of that awful moment are for another time. Suffice it to say that her discovery and acknowledgement were just tips of significant icebergs that plumbed fathoms through the generations. Grief knows no bounds, for loss is loss, irrespective of relativity, and its lack of expression is poison. I could see how my bouts of intermittent depression were fueled by anger, guilt, and powerlessness at my twin sister's unacknowledged loss, and my hidden state of overwhelming grief and self-rejection. In all of this, their enhanced closeness, their new horizons, I have learned that there was one antidote, and that has been tears. Their outpouring is an acknowledgement of loss, and is a statement of honor and respect to who or what has been lost. Problem is, we're not as a species very good at shedding tears. We need to learn to cry anew. There should be no apology for tears. Thank you.
Nick, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. I just think your antidote is marvelous as well. And your words, I love your words anyway, but your voice as well, it's just very soothing.
Oh,
And when
thank
you
you.
say the tip of significant icebergs, my God, you know, did you grow up not knowing or having a feeling that there was something, but you didn't know that?
There was always an element of feeling that there was something missing, that I was searching for somebody, looking for somebody. But it was only, as I say, 20 years ago, when I was in an emotionally precarious state, that all these questions started to become asked and answered. So yeah, it's still, I think, as Stan was saying, it's something that you don't just visit this once. It comes back over and over, and you retell the story. I think it's a way of processing, of integration, of acceptance and acknowledgement. And it's not something that can be done, especially when it's been buried for so long. You can't just do it at a whim. So, oh, you're back. Sorry, I had you on small screen there. So yeah, it's ongoing work and always will be, I think.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's really
Thank you.
nice. Thank you so much. Now, Catherine Ronan is next.